In this video, we're going to be going through the Dwell Bible app. It's an audio Bible app, and I'll be sharing some ideas on how we might use that for Bible memory. So first things first, what is Dwell? Well, Dwell, as I've said, is an audio Bible app, and it's basically designed to give you a relatively immersive listening experience. Within the app itself, there are various translations. There are 8 different translations in the English language. There is also a Portuguese and a Spanish translation. It is, as already mentioned, designed for a immersive experience. So when you read a different translation, you're going to get a range of voices that you can listen to, and some of them, well, essentially they all have different accents. So some of them are American, some of them have a UK accent. There's one from Kenya, and there's a range of different voices. They make the experience more engaging. Then you also have background ambient music tracks that you can listen to in the background to the person speaking. They are, of course, optional, but there are a range of them. Okay, so that's what Dwell is, but how do we use it for scripture memory? Well, here's a few things that I use it for. First of all, I like to use Dwell primarily as an audio Bible. That is, when I'm beginning to listen to the passage for the first time before I've memorized it, I will prefer to listen to it on Dwell. And that's just because it's a fairly immersive experience and it has the Bible translation that I memorize in as one of its translations. Secondly, I like to create playlists, and you can see that on the right here. Playlists basically are a feature in Dwell that enable you to piece together your own collection of passages from the Bible. And one of the playlists that I make is a playlist called Memorized Chapters. And every chapter that I memorize, I will add that in to my memorized chapter playlist. And once I've got that, I'll update that every little while so that it's fairly up to date with the new chapters that I've memorized. And I will listen through that every now and then, listen through some of the chapters in there and try and recite along with it, or maybe just listen if I'm feeling a bit tired, not up to reciting at that point. I also create another playlist, sometimes with some chapters that I'm considering memorizing in the near future. So if I was memorizing through the book of Galatians, I might, for example, take some of the later chapters in the book of Galatians and put them in a playlist so that I can listen to them at some points as well, just to familiarize myself with the passages when it comes to memorizing it. One other feature that I really like using in Dwell from time to time is what's called read along. And basically, read along, you can listen to the person who's reading the text while seeing the text, and the text will actually follow the person speaking. And that's just really useful. It can be useful if you want to kind of initially get your head into what is the passage saying. You can hear it, or you can look at it. You can do both at the same time. Or if you've already memorized it, it can be really useful for just reading through it again while listening to it and maybe trying to say it at the same time and really make sure that you're not making any mistakes. So there are some other ways to use Dwell as well. So one of them is to use Dwell mode. And basically what Dwell mode is, it enables you to repeat a chapter, a book, a playlist, a whole queue of verses, or even just a single verse. It enables you to repeat them over and over, but with a short pause between each repetition. And basically that pause can enable you to do a number of things. It can enable you to just stop and reflect on the passage, or to dwell on the passage, as the name of the app implies. Or it can enable you to try and recite the passage, to commit it to memory. So maybe you have you're repeating, Genesis 1:1 in dwell mode. You're just repeating it over and over with a 10-second break. So you hear Genesis 1:1 read to you, then you have a 10-second gap where you try and recite it, and then you listen to Genesis 1:1 again, make sure you got it right. Then you have a 10-second gap where you recite it, and you might do that a few times until you're confident with it. And then maybe you add Genesis 1:1 to Genesis 1:2, and you listen to verses 1 and 2, and then you have a 10-second gap and you try and recite it. and you slowly build up that way. There is also a sleep feature, and basically this is a timer, a countdown timer, at which point the app will stop reading to you, basically. And the main benefit of this is it enables you to go to sleep listening to the Bible, having someone read the Bible to you. And that can be really helpful if you are trying to memorize a passage, because it means you go to sleep while you're thinking about it. You wake up thinking about it, in some cases anyway, and it just can be really useful overall. Another way to use Dwell for Bible memory is just to listen to whole chapters or books on repeat, whether they're ones that you've already memorized or whether they're ones that you are going to memorize in the future. So I just want to look at some other benefits of using Dwell. So I've already mentioned that it's a really engaging and immersive listening experience. That's something that you do get sometimes with other audio Bibles, but with this one, you can really tailor it to your favorite voice, your favorite translation, some nice background music if you want it as well. In addition to that, you've got the range of voices, the range of music that enables that customization, and that they're always constantly being added to. So Dwell, the people who work at Dwell are actively adding more voices and actively or very slowly adding more music tracks. In addition to that, I've already mentioned you can create playlists of Bible verses or chapters for memorization and recitation using Dwell mode if you want. It is also worth noting that Dwell themselves curate playlists and Bible reading plans, and some of those playlists are specifically designed for Bible memorization. So you can look up some of them and subscribe essentially to them, and every day or every week you might get a new verse that'll help you to memorize. So some more benefits to Dwell. First of all, you can change the playback speed. So when you're listening to a passage, you might decide they're reading too slowly for my liking. I'm going to speed it up. Or maybe they're reading too quickly. I'm going to slow it down. And that can be helpful when trying to recite along with them as well. You can also download tracks for listening offline. That's really useful if you are low on data and you need to download over Wi-Fi. Maybe you're driving through the country and you don't have Wi-Fi, you don't have signal reception the whole time. Well, if you've downloaded the tracks, you can just listen to them on repeat. And last of all, the Dwell, people who own Dwell and who run it, who build it, who created it, they basically, their vision was they wanted to have an immersive listening experience. And one of the ways that they are marketing that as a use is to help people memorize scripture. So it's good that that's one of their goals. One of the ways the people they're targeting is people who are trying to memorize scripture. Okay, so the final conclusions then on Dwell, basically it's a really great app. It's quite polished. They're constantly providing updates, fixes for bugs. They're very responsive. If you want to give them feedback, there's basically a lot of uses, a lot of ways you can use this. It's quite a flexible app in terms of scripture memorization. And lastly, as I've already mentioned, it's being run by people who really have a desire to see people engage with the Bible. So that's the conclusion on the Dwell Bible app and its uses for scripture memorization. If you have any other thoughts, any other ways you use Dwell or any other Bible app for memorization, I'd encourage you to put them in the comments and maybe have a look around at the other videos on this channel for different ways to memorize the Bible. All right, I'll see you around.